The Gaza conflict has ignited a wave of instability across West Asia, with geopolitical repercussions extending far beyond the immediate violence. There are players at work over here, some actively involved, some reluctantly so. We have the West that has played a very important role in the Israel-Hamas war, supporting Israel. We also have West Asia, where important Arab countries have come out in support of Palestine and the cause of Palestine. But there are some major Arab leaders, world powers, and countries who have not come out in support the way they should have. The question is why? Countries like UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, Oman, but particularly the biggest Arab world nation, Saudi Arabia. Now, as the world watches, the impact is felt in unexpected corners of the region, including two of the most ambitious infrastructure and economic projects of the 21st century. Saudi Arabia's NEOM megacity and the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, or what is known as IMEC. Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. Arabia has been very vocal about its criticism of Israeli actions in Gaza and against Palestinians. There are reasons why they've also been very careful. NEOM, the flagship project of Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030, is designed to be a groundbreaking city, an ultra-modern, high-tech haven that will transform how they live, work, and travel. But where is NEOM? Look at this map and you'll see why Saudi Arabia has been very jittery about this entire conflict. Hundreds of billions of dollars invested in this one city. NEOM, a flagship project of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, is a project that is looking to mirror cities like Dubai in the UAE. A business hub, one that attracts investments, and one that becomes a huge project that will be bringing in billions of dollars into Saudi Arabia. Also, a country that is known to be a closed country now opening up to the world. And in such a scenario, to have a conflict between Israel and Palestine does not bode well for the future of NEOM City in Saudi Arabia. The map gives it away. Adjacent to Israel is this entire city, and with the conflict, we have seen dwindling of investments going into NEOM. There are concerns with regards to whether there's going to be stability, and if there is no stability, how will then this project take flight? At the heart of the project is the Line, a 170-kilometer smart city that promised to house millions in a linear, environmentally sustainable metropolis.
I don't recall a project ever in history with a number like $500 billion. And that is the proof that what we are going to do there is creating a new country in a country, a new economy that is going to support the main economy of Saudi Arabia.
But today, as regional instability deepens, this vision has faced substantial hurdles. In response to mounting financial pressures, geopolitical tensions, and dramatic reduction in foreign investment, NEOM's once grand vision is now shrinking. Moreover, $500 billion NEOM mega project
aiming to
has
bring
been replaced by Ayman
One sheet of bounty versus one sheet of the ordinary brand.
Aiming to bring ceasefire deal negotiations between Israel and Hezbollah to a close. That is U.S. envoy Amos Hochstein's stated goal as he travels to Israel Wednesday. He spent the last 2 days in Beirut trying to broker a truce. Before he departed, he said the Biden administration was also communicating with the incoming Trump administration on the matter.
We're going to work with the incoming administration. We are already going to be discussing this with them. They will be fully aware of everything that we're doing. As President Biden said, there will be an orderly transfer of power, and I don't think that will be an issue here.
Right, Faraz Maqsad is a Middle East expert. He joins me now. A lot of movement, and of course, we've been waiting to hear any kind of news, whether they'll be able to broker some kind of ceasefire. Let's start off with Amos Hochstein's potential progress that he made in Beirut, if any, over the past 2 days.
Eleni, Amos Hochstein made incremental progress in Beirut. In fact, I was discussing this issue with senior members of his team who stayed behind here in Washington, D.C. last night, and I was told that the level of optimism was ebbing and flowing throughout the night, particularly as Amos Hochstein went back to the American embassy and continued his negotiations over the text with senior advisors of Nabih Berri, the Lebanese Speaker of Parliament. So there is currently cautious optimism, certainly optimism in the fact that these negotiations are continuing and that Amos Hochstein is moving on to Israel to discuss this with Israeli officials. But it's just that. It's very cautious optimism. And certainly there's a recognition that right now Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu has a sense that he's winning and he has escalation dominance. And it really is going to come down to him whether he chooses to push forward further in Lebanon or to try and consolidate his gains through the text being put and considered in front of him.
Yeah. We also know that the leader of Hezbollah, Naim Qassem, has also spoken, and interestingly, this is what he said, saying that these ceasefire negotiations are a test of Israel's seriousness. What do you make of the messaging from the Hezbollah side?
Yeah, Hezbollah here very clearly on its back foot. I think the question and the consideration for Hezbollah's leadership, and let's be honest, for Iran, that is the main sponsor and supporter and trainer of the group, is whether they're better off trying to reconstitute their influence, their power in Lebanon through an agreement and the various ambiguities that they've tried to build into this text, particularly when it comes to the enforcement mechanism, or that this agreement will not serve that purpose and they're better off trying to reconstitute and rebalance under Israeli fire.
Ominous words from Russia's president after Ukraine fires U.S.-made long-range missiles into his country. President Vladimir Putin formally lowering the threshold for his nation's use of nuclear weapons. It's a chilling indication of the significant dangers, not just there, but around the world, during the final 2 months of the Biden-Harris administration before President-elect Trump is inaugurated as the 47th president. Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin starts us off tonight live from the Pentagon. Good evening, Jennifer.
Good evening, Brett. Russia's reaction was immediate, just hours after the first strike using tactical American ballistic missiles, and 2 days after we learned that President Biden had lifted.
We're unboxing unbeatable values for your home every Friday in November because
missiles. Overnight, Ukraine struck military targets inside Russia for the first time using U.S.-provided long-range strike fires known as ATACMS. Hours later, in response, Russian President Vladimir Putin signed a new nuclear doctrine, lowering the Kremlin's threshold to use tactical nuclear weapons. He had warned he would do so in September if the U.S. permitted Ukraine to strike Russian territory.
It is a signal that they want to escalate the conflict, and it is impossible to use these high-tech missiles without the Americans. Putin has said this many times.
The Pentagon says it has seen no change to Russia's nuclear posture, despite its saber rattling.
We don't have any indications that Russia is preparing to use a nuclear weapon within Ukraine. We don't see any changes that need to be made to our own nuclear posture.
The pre-dawn attack struck a military facility in the Bryansk region of southwest Russia, just north of Kursk, where 11,000 North Korean troops are preparing to attack Ukraine. When President Zelensky visited the White House in September, he asked President Biden to lift the restriction, a request Biden rebuffed for more than a year, fearing an escalation with Russia. All this has led to a tense situation in Europe. On Monday, Sweden distributed millions of pamphlets on wartime preparation, updating the In Case of Crisis or War Guide to reflect the worsening security situation. The revised version is now twice as long as it was 6 years ago. The White House is expected to announce another $275 million weapons package for Ukraine, part of the $60 billion supplemental passed by Congress last spring. The weapons will come from existing U.S. stockpiles and will include the HIMAR rocket launching system, artillery shells, drones, and Javelin missiles. Brett?
Jennifer Griffin, live at the Pentagon. Jennifer, thank you.
Openness that Vladimir Putin seems to be indicating to a ceasefire discussion with Donald Trump?
Well, it just proved that it was the right decision to provide Ukraine with long-range missiles, and we've been waiting for this decision for quite long. And we want the other countries which are capable to provide Ukraine with such a support follow the suit.
There's pushback on that narrative, though, that if you were starting to see at least openness and Vladimir Putin come to the table for, again, these ceasefire talks, comments he hasn't made in a very long time, is only seeming to come to the surface post-Donald Trump's election. Is this the right time to be using those long-range missiles?
Again, we are talking about talking to Russia from the position of strength. And finally, it's happening. So you see that as soon as Ukraine is getting stronger, as soon as Ukraine could be capable now to strike back, you see what's happening in Russia. So you see this development, and also what happened with this Putin's decision about changing the nuclear doctrine. It shows that it works. So if you talk to him with a position from strength, so they're more ready for a conversation.
Well, let's talk about what that conversation may actually look like, because along with those Reuters headlines, there's the argument that he's not looking to cede territory where there's already perhaps a bigger Russian influence. Where do you stand on that?
Look, we are not in the negotiation right now, and important thing is that we are prepared for any negotiations. And what we need now, we need more weapon, we need air defense. And as soon as it's happening, so we will have better chance to have a meaningful and just peace.
Let's talk about that weapon delivery. Long-range missiles is, of course, the major headline. I believe the Biden administration has also now signed off on anti-personnel landmines as well. But you're getting some very real resistance on other sorts of machinery and weapons from some of your European allies. Germany, of course, top of mind as well. How confident are you that Europe will maybe follow the American lead?
I'm sure you remember how it started from the complete no, impossible, and then maybe, and finally we start receiving tanks, F-16s, and different kinds of ammunition. And I'm sure that it's important that the first step is made, and when we push hard, we can achieve what we need.
We have a new commission here in Brussels, expected to start shortly, certainly in the new year as well. How confident are you that maybe support that Ukraine has felt in the EU, maybe in the past 2 years, will continue in this new commission?
No, we are quite confident that the new commission will stick to the same line, and the composition of the new commission, especially on important portfolios like security affairs, new position on the of defense commissioner, gives us quite a good signal that the policy will continue, that Ukraine will get necessary support, and we are getting support. Take, for example, the new tranche, 4 billion for Ukraine, which is coming through in the coming weeks. G7 loan, and I think this policy will continue.
Well, there is some pushback against that argument, given that more EU member states seem to be taking a more direct approach. For example, in the last couple of days, Olaf Scholz on a phone call with Vladimir Putin. How are you thinking about that? Is that a betrayal in your mind when you're lobbying for this support, this continued support from the EU and from the United States? How do you view that phone call?
Look, I don't want to comment about the substance of this call. So what is important is, actions. What is important is a policy, and we hope that the policy of Germany will not change, because Germany supports Ukraine a lot, and Germany companies like Rheinmetall, for instance, they're present in Ukraine. They produce in Ukraine, not only providing Ukraine the equipment. So yes, it's a difficult situation. So election campaign almost started. But again, we hope that there is no treason.
No change in policy, but certainly a little bit of a change in action when it comes to, you have to admit that a phone call between Germany and Russia was not even on the table 2 years ago, even 1 year ago, even a couple of weeks ago. That was not certainly something that was even being considered. On top of that, Germany is now almost hesitating when it comes to certain weaponry, not all weaponry, but certain weaponry, the Taurus missiles, of course, coming to mind. Are you sure about that kind of closeness in policy, especially in the context of a new German election in just a couple of months?
So what is important is the substance. What kind of message is delivered? And we hope that right messages are delivered during that type of conversations. And you're right, we need more equipment, we need more components, and it's really unacceptable that we find Western components in the Russian missiles and other equipment. And we want Germany and other countries to provide not only equipment, but electronics and other necessary parts of the equipment to Ukraine, because we can produce a lot. We increased our production, comparing to the situation in 2022, 18 times. So we have a big industry, but we need support.
Do you think that support could get additional pushback from the likes of Hungary? For example, they seem to be more vocal in those EU conversations. They've objected to aid in the past. What role does that play in these goals?
Well, indeed, we managed to cooperate with the EU on defense and security issues, and our colleagues in the EU, they find a way to solve those situations. Yes, there are complications, but we are getting through.